Ever notice how the best ideas show up right after a real conversation, not a meeting? Listeners, welcome back to this episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host, Sana, and today we are talking about the kind of culture where those conversations are normal and mental health isn't an afterthought. So, listeners, let me tell you something, like the workplace, especially because today we are going to talk about mental health in workplace. We are also going to explore how leaders and business owners can actually maintain and understand employee well-being in the truest meaning, and why inviting people into the ideation process is pure rocket fuel for both the morale and the innovation. So, listeners, let me introduce my guest to you. Joining me is someone who blends heart with hard data, Ryan McClellan. Now, he's a certified life coach specializing in self-esteem, mindset, and leadership. And let me share a bit about him with all of you. So he has launched and led 9 businesses since he was just 18. Yeah, just 18. And he holds a master's degree in marketing and a BA in organizational psychology. And he's the author of 6 books. On stage and on mic, he is known for bold truths, practical mind shifts, and stories that stick. So, Ryan, welcome to the show, and it's really an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. By the way, that was such a great introduction. I think I've done better. You had more information about me than I had about myself. So it's a pleasure to be here. And, anyone listening or watching, this is going to be, like you said, it's going to kind of be a topic that's discussed often, but there's a few twists and turns I've kind of figured out to throw into this. So it should be interesting.
It definitely is, and I think it is. It has been more. It has been becoming more prevalent post-pandemic. We have seen huge shifts, not only professionally but personally in almost everyone's lives and in workplaces, in the way of working, in the way of living, in the way of thinking as well, Ryan. So I think this couldn't be a better time to discuss very openly about mental health in workplace. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, Ryan, let's begin, with the status quo here. And whenever we come to the wellness or mental health or, specifically related to employees, it all kind of comes to policies. And when we talk about mental health policies, a lot of companies, they are taking some brilliant, good initiatives. However, culture is what people feel, they would feel on a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon. So I would love to know from you, and I think this will be so beneficial for our listeners. What's the first practical move a leader can make this week to move from the usual paper policy to a lived practice, something which is, which can be executed and implemented?
That's a very good question. And it's one that's going to sound incredibly simple, yet I've been in digital marketing and consulting 18 years, and I've never seen it happen once. I would say if you are in a leadership role or a manager role, or if you are just, at the end of the day, a manager is just someone leading a team, they're a person as well. Instead of looking just at the analytics and the data and the reports and so on and so forth, the one thing that I've noticed about mental health in the workplace is a lot of people, I think 86% have what's called job insecurity. In other words, they have that feeling that they can't talk to their boss about the truth because they fear they're going to get fired. So I would say the first step, if you want to do one thing for the week, to get the atmosphere going and to kind of start moving things forward in an optimistic manner, is simply spend a day or maybe even the week outside of your office, maybe not outside of it the whole time, but go through the company and talk to people, ask them how they're doing, I know this sounds very sounds very simple, like common sense kind of stuff, but a lot of I found that the further away you get from the actual ground floor where things are going, as an example, a sales team, versus the CEO who's not seeing the sales performance, he's just seeing what's being done, the numbers, the charts. That this one's doing good, this one's doing bad. We have to realize that at the end of the day, we're all human. There was one instance when and this was kind of, I guess, the example that I could bring up. I was working with it was a sales team. It was in the office, and I was just talking to the manager. I was doing something completely different from what I intended on doing, and he noticed one of the employees came in 15 minutes late. And he said, "That's the third day she's done that. I should what do I do? I'm gonna fire her." And I was thinking to myself, you could do that, but is she a good employee? And he said, "Yeah, she's great." And I said, "Okay, well, ask yourself, why is she 15 minutes late? Because I don't think people purposely go to work to show up late. There's got to be a reason." And he said, "I don't know. I don't know why she shows up late." And I said, "Did you ask why she showed up late?" And when he did, he found out she had been going through a really bad divorce. She was having to carpool her children and their friends. Hence, she had to take an extra route. And she was almost fired for walking in 15 minutes late, basically, when there was a valid reason. And that's the thing that I think leaders and executives alike need to start embracing, is realizing that though they are employees and business is business, as they say, if you really want to get, and not just the mental health aspect of things, but also get your organization, your team, your product, your service to really get the full impact, you have to talk to those on the ground floor, and they can't be scared of you. That's what I've noticed, is a lot of people are very afraid of their bosses, and it shouldn't be that way. They make the decision on what happens, but you have as much, at the same time, it's 10 times harder to find a new employee than it is to keep one. So it's good to know your employees, get social with them. Not too social. Obviously, there's a line in the sand you have to draw, but I would say this week, just go around and just ask everybody how their day is going, and start going from there, from that point onward.
Yeah, you're so right. And Ryan, here now, lot of thoughts in my mind, because
Mhm.
some of the similar experiences I have gone through, I have seen other people going through. Now, there are two schools of thoughts here. Especially when it comes to the leadership style,
Mhm.
in the context of mental health. Now, then we talk about authoritative or a more direct and straight leadership, where rules are rules and numbers are numbers. And yes, if you're not doing it, you're on. So that is the one.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
second one is, there have been many conversations around EQ, empathetic leadership, servant
Mhm.
leadership. Um, how do you think that the importance of mental health is only applicable in a workplace, in the culture, when the leadership style is somewhere in the middle of these two schools of thoughts?
Good question. I have a statistic for that, actually. 76% of employees report, this was done by, I think it was Forbes or Gallup in 2024, a poll that they did. 76% of employees are, or just people working in general. Keep in mind, the managers are also part of the mental health equation. They might be dealing with their own burnout. But 76% are, they technically have at least one symptom of mental health issues or some sort of crisis, whether it's burnout, whether it's fatigue, or just depression. And the other thing, and this is where I love the question you asked, is 86% of them said the reason they why they don't like their work, or maybe don't like it as much as they could, is because of the environment that they're working in. And that goes back to not just the environment as in the room, the office, the cubicles, and that goes for the leadership side. And, I do agree, there's authoritative, where it's kind of, you're a little bit more crass and there's kind of the rules by rules. There has to be a subtle balance that you have to work out. And the best way to do that is really, like you had said, and as I've been doing for 10 years, mindset is 70% of everything. 30% is applying it to something. And if you can shift your mindset to these employees are not your friends, but they are, they're putting money in your pocket in that sense. So they're on the front lines doing the job, and you're distance yourself from the numbers and such. It means when you walk into a Starbucks and order a coffee and he asks, how's your day going? You just casual conversation, stuff like that. They're still going to make you pay for the coffee, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
So there's a line you have to draw, because obviously if you get too friendly, they might start slacking you off, they take advantage, and at which point you kind of lose that sense of face. But at the same time, if you're the kind where you're, very hard to speak to, I honestly think an employee should feel open to talk to their boss or their leader or the CEO or anyone in the company about personal issues that may be affecting work. That's a definitive part that has been defined in the past 5 years of mental health. And I guess that's the best way to put it, is just really understand that almost 9 out of 10 employees that you're working with, statistically speaking anyway, are not afraid of you. But if you could ask them how they are, they will say all right, even if they're not. So find that balance of be human. That's the best way to say it. Be a person. But at the same time, if performance is going low or going down, that doesn't mean to fire them right away. It means to ask what's going on. Is there something going on that may be explaining it? In which case, then you could rectify it. Just to make a point there, there's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great book. I don't understand much of it, but there was a good story. And it's basically people in general react a lot better to positive reinforcement than they do to harsh critiques or what they would call, he was helping the Israeli army train for something. This was in the 70s, and the captain would only, the commander would only get on the radio, and he would yell at the employee if they do something wrong. You're deviating off course or something, and the employee would straighten out the plane, and they'd land, and then they'd get off, and they would walk, and the next person would go at. This individual, who was a Nobel Prize winner in economics and he was a very impactful man, said, okay, well, try something different. Try, while they're in the air, if they're making a mistake, make mental note of it. Don't bring it up while they're in the sky, 1,000 feet in the air. And then when they get down, praise them for doing what they're, for the good that they did, and then constructively go back over those notes you made about what they did wrong and do it constructively. I like to picture someone with their, the commander putting his arm around the guy's shoulder and just, okay, well, next time though, just make sure you do whatever, So you have to kind of have the balance of being a nice, not a nice person, but just being a person in general, but also making sure that people are held accountable for what they need to be held accountable for.
Exactly. That's very, very well put, Ryan. I couldn't agree more with this. I think this is something that, kind of sometimes gets dissolved or overlooked during, such discussions, especially when it comes to leadership style. Now, if we go to the other end here, the other side, from the employees end, Ryan, now we are, talking, we are speaking the context of the workforce, which is an entire new generation, the Gen Z, the generational Z, who is now an active part of the workforce globally. And I'm very surprised and really very interested to see what kind of culture they bring in, at a bigger level. I'm seeing increased discussions with the human resource teams, their managers, their employers, or during interviews, very actively discussing about mental health or personal boundaries sometimes as well, and they're very much actively involved in that. That is something that really, really, really piques my interest, because if I look 10 years back or 15 years back, I wouldn't have that courage to ask my interview. And my timings are only 9 to 5. After that, I'm not available. I'm available all the time. I just need to work and prove myself. That was something that I would say. So what's your thought on this?
I think what happened was, I'll put it this way: there's been a lot of negative critiques about Generation Z.
Yeah.
They've been termed the loneliest generation. Yeah, I'm millennial. I grew up with AOL on the computer when they were first becoming like normal in phones. Gen Z grew up with social media. It's a very I say this because as I do work, I don't know if I mentioned this. I went to FIU, Florida International University, my school for my master's, but I went at the age of 30. So this was 5 years ago, and I was actually involved more with the faculty than I was with the actual students. And one of the roles, and I still actively participate in this, is called the Inspiring Business Mentor Program. And I work with college students, which are by definition Gen Z. And I honestly had my impressions about, a lot of managers or leaders or CEOs complain that they come in with flip-flops, or they don't dress appropriately, they're out of the norm, maybe they don't have the networking skills that they should, they don't know how to communicate, all this negativity. And then I, on the other hand, have been on the firsthand experience of meeting with these kids. And there's this one girl, Kathy. That's not a real name. Let's just assume her name is Kathy. Yeah. She's a psych major, or was a psych major about 3 years ago. And she was taking 6 classes. Pretty much that's 4 classes a day throughout the week. She was doing 2 internships. In psychology, you do labs, which are like, the hands-on work. I never got in one, but I know they do it. She was doing 2 of those, 2 internships, 6 classes. And then one day it was 7 p.m. I was in one of not the office, but like one of the little cubicle areas they set up for me, because I'm not paid. I just do it voluntarily. And she came in and was just smiling and just like happy and energetic. And she came in and said, "Okay, well, I'm here. What did you need to see me for?" And I'm like, kind of staring at her going, "How are you still walking like right now? How did you not just fall asleep?" And it amazed me. And I realized, though, a lot of the norms of generations, and as we know, baby boomers were one that was generations, millennials. We all have these stereotypes about certain generation. Baby boomers being very hippie-ish with the Vietnam movement, and very liberal in that sense, not being political. Just that term is the actual definition of what they were doing. Very there's millennials who are praised as a generation that kind of grew up with technology and so on. But Gen Z, I've been on the front floor. I am impressed. I think that there's still some work to be done. I think a lot of social media has kind of, not just social media, but just society in general kind of looks down on this generation. And as you said, about 5 years ago, around the time the pandemic began, they were entering college around that time. And these are the kinds of individuals who will quit the job in 3 days if they don't like the work environment. And they will risk being without a house just because they're not, I'm not speaking for every Gen Z, but majority of them are very vocal. It's a very vocal group. And I give them incredible progress with that. And I see the ones that I deal with weekly, and they are doing things as far as just cognitive load, the way they handle classes, the way they handle life. They're doing things that I have never seen before in such a beautiful way. And mental health has been a big issue. In fact, I credit them as, mental health has been around, the idea of it since the 70s. There was, I forgot his name, but he was the first to propose shorter work days. And then there was another group that found that there was a model that they used called the 52-17 rule. And what that meant is for every work hour, you do 52 minutes of focus, in other words, 52 minutes of work, and 17 minutes of rest. And that's one thing I kind of wanted to trickle in there because not just speaking of Gen Z, but just speaking about mental health in the workplace, we are, the brain's 20% of the body's, uses 20% of the body's energy. We have to get breaks every now and then. And Gen Z knows it. They may not know that they know it, but they are the ones that are kind of leading that movement where it's going in the direction of, okay, well, I'm not going to sit here for 8 hours with one lunch break and just grind my brain out and stress and, and that's why they were kind of considered a generation that it was difficult to hire because they were kind of against norms. They were kind of a certain personality type, but at the end of the day, they are the reason why we're even talking about mental health today. I'll put it this way. I don't think society or the amount of work people put in has gotten any easier or any simpler than it was 100 years ago. It's just now people are taking notice, and it's important because mental health can cause mental illness.
Exactly. And it can also translate physically as well. Like endlessly.
Yes.
That's very well put once again, Ryan. Very well. And now let's talk about solutions as well here. So, Ryan, do you have like guardrails, like a framework or a clean, repeatable structure, like surveys or design sprints or groups that, turns employee input into a clear, actionable decision within, let's say, let's assume 2 weeks or maybe a month?
Let's go with a month. I would say that I don't have like a system in that sense, but I do have. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in offices before remote work became kind of commonplace, and a lot of them were sales teams. And majority of the time, I guess the system I would say is be as I hate to say it this way. It's a lot of listeners and watchers are probably going to go, okay, well, this guy's nuts for saying this, but be a little unworthy. The most well-put companies that I bet Google, Amazon, all the companies that succeed the most are statistically the ones that go above and beyond just a simple norm of, okay, well, if you're having a bad day, go home and call in sick and then come back. That doesn't help burnout. That just gets them away from work for 3 days and then they come back and they go back to it. So my system is not something you could accomplish maybe in a month, but just number one, start including employees. Give them, if you have a meeting room, have once a week, just once a week, a 30-minute to 1 hour open room kind of discussion, and invite employees. Not all of them have to come, but you never know, they might have some good ideas. I think there's a lot that managers and leaders in the workforce are neglecting, is that I've noticed that the higher you go up in I guess the company status, the further away you get from the ground of the operation. You're not seeing the actual work. You're really just seeing the reports, the numbers of performance. I would say, and this was something I proposed, this might not work in a month, but it's a start. It's once again very unorthodox, but I had one company and they looked at me like I was nuts, and then a month later their performance had improved pretty pragmatically, 26% more in terms of revenue and close sales. And all I told them to do was, I said, just put up, this was the sales team. They were stocks. If you've heard of Wolf of Wall Street with Leo DiCaprio. I said, okay, well, you know what? These people are asleep. They're not talking. They're just on the phone all day. Get TVs. And I wasn't joking, and he actually did it. I said, put a couple TVs around viewing areas. Don't have like music, don't have like volume blaring or whatever, but have movies and just play movies like Wolf of Wall Street, like, as an example, because that would motivate them to think like, oh, that's right. That's why I got into this business. Or, in healthcare, play movies of Patch Adams. Just try to get people away from and it sounds almost unproductive, like they're not going to be doing their work, but we don't realize that or let the employees have 5 minutes of free time without chastising them if they want to go on social media and check Facebook. I'm a strong advocate for letting employees be autonomous in that sense, where they have the freedom to get out, walk around if they need to, which does help not just their body, but their mind. It oxygenates the brain, circulation goes up. And when you're, on calls all day at a desk for 8 hours or whatever the working hours are with one lunch break, the brain slows down, it gets tired, it uses a lot of energy in a lot of the areas that aren't responsible for productivity and rational thinking. So let employees kind of be autonomous. That doesn't mean let them go out with their friends while they're at work, but it means like if someone wants to go drive to lunch, or if someone, I'm not condoning smoking, I don't smoke, but I'm just saying if someone wants a smoke break, let them have it, but it's not really that hard to say you could sacrifice 10 to 15 minutes out of the day for micro break, as I call them. Give people little moments where they can kind of just micro breaks, where you can kind of just unwind, and you'd be amazed what can get accomplished in 5 minutes of just doing whatever you need to do, of stepping away from the work. And that's one system. Another is just try to practice what you preach. I had a manager that I forget if it was the manager or the CEO. He was one of them. He was telling employees to be more. This wasn't sales. This was a retail store, and he was telling his employees, okay, well, you got to be more friendly. And then I remember just kind of being in the back office, and all of a sudden I hear him on the phone and he's screaming into it, yelling at somebody. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, you're not practicing what you preach. And that's why no one, and if I heard it from 100 feet away, the store heard it. Those employees heard it, and therefore they're going to think, now they're, number one, now they're afraid of you. Number two, they're not going to work as hard. People don't realize that this is a fact. Most, if not all, employees would rather go to a job that pays less, if it means having a better work environment, than they would if you threw $20,000 at them and made them feel like, okay, well, it's monetary. So there's some steps I would take. And first step is just open the doors a little bit. And as I guess you could put it this way, don't keep your dog on a medium leash. Keep the employees on a medium leash. If you have it on too tight of a leash, the dog can't move. It's not a dog. Too long, and it gets away from you. Chases a squirrel or something, and that's when, you lose the dog and waste time trying to find him. Put them on a medium leash, which means kind of let them do their thing. But at the same time, if you need to hold someone accountable for something, do it, but do it the right way, which is not by yelling, not by showing frustration. You have to really understand that employees, or anybody in general, we all want the same thing, which is happiness and respect and, dare I say, freedom, in that sense, to be able to do what we want to do. Obviously, if that's affecting the work itself, you notice that the employee's slacking off or just not, you give them too much leeway. That's when you pull them back to the short leash and say, okay, well, bad dog, you've been going too far. But try to give them some freedom and just, just like I said, simple, unorthodox methods work. And the crazier, the better, to be honest with you.
Exactly. I think that really calls for such a fine, not fine, I mean, that balance in there, that subtle balance. And I think this also kind of makes me really think about, there was one very recent article, online in a newspaper I was reading that it was about um, a young CEO, not very young. I mean, he must be in his late 30s or something. So he had made a very interesting observation by interviewing around 30 or 40 candidates, 30 or 40 people for a specific job. And what he said is there's one particular thing that makes an employee or a person who is looking for work or job happy is whether that workplace or the culture in there is allowing them to be themselves, giving them that freedom to work in their own style. And having said that, yes, there has to be, a direction, planning, so that it's
Exactly.
beneficial for both, not only just for the employer or employee, but for both.
Exactly. If you have an unhappy team, you're gonna have an unproductive workforce, and uh, it is true. We all want not. I'm not saying everyone wants the same things, but we all have. We're not as evolved as species as we honestly think. We really do react emotionally and then justify our actions logically. In other words, the part of the brain that's the oldest, that's billions of years old, reacts before it ever gets to the rational part of the brain. So I like to look at it as, that's a perfect article and a perfect example, because if you have that sense of, I guess not freedom, but that sense of not having a fear that your actions are going to lead to you just being fired or punished. And we've all seen the stereotypes, and I've seen it in person, and we've all probably seen it in person where the boss is standing there yelling at someone for getting the wrong copy. And that employee is probably going to smile and walk away and say, yes, sir, I'll get it right away. But on the inside, they hate your guts. And that's not good for business. It's not just the employee that you have to worry about, because higher performing companies technically are the ones that have higher satisfaction rates among the people working in them. So that's basically a perfect way to put it, I guess.
Totally, totally. Well, we are though short on time, but Ryan, I think before we wrap up, I think this particular aspect has to be discussed upon. So, um, let's say if someone discloses that they are struggling without wanting to involve HR, or without wanting to anyone to know, because I think as an employee, I or anyone, irrespective of whether the Gen Z or Gen X or Boomer, we would want that psychological safety. And also at the same time, leaders, they worry about the legal lines and confidentiality. So what's the next best steps that respects privacy but doesn't leave the manager or the leader unsupported?
That's actually a good one. I don't know the answer to it, but I can give my thought on it at the most.
Okay.
I would say there are ways to get around having to talk to your boss or having to talk to HR without violating any norms. As an example, there was one employee that I had to, basically my job was to just improve the performance, as always with majority of these positions. And I was kind of talking to him and kind of saying, he wanted to go home. He was very tired, and he was going through a difficult time. His mother had cancer, was in the hospital, was given, like 3 weeks to live. And I said, well, yeah, I at the time I wasn't thinking regulations and crossing too many lines. Because, if you go on HR, there's a chance HR is going to say, okay, well, we want you to go take care of her, and then you don't have work. And you come back, someone's replaced you. This happens often.
Yeah.
Exactly. It might actually, it's called job insecurity. That's why most employees don't vent their feelings to the HR, to the bosses, because they're afraid that the truth might cause a chain reaction. But I had one employee, I said, as an example, one website, betterhelp.com. It's I don't use them, but they are like kind of telehealth therapists, I guess you could say, that you could do online on the phone. I would say don't tell your boss, don't tell HR. If they ask, tell them, because that's, if they see that happening, then maybe they'll consider it a good thing, and it's not wasting time. It's I would say, if you're not getting if you get a 30-minute lunch break, take your lunch break,
Mhm.
but try to get a session in once a week with one of these therapists while you're at work and just talk through feelings. And in theory, if we really did it right, there would be an entire department. And this is where I think things are going to start heading, as we spoke about advocacy for mental health, and people starting to actually realize how much this affects the organization as well, and society, and the mentality of people. The most logical step, I think, in the future would be to kind of have it somewhat of a, in school we had guidance counselors who were like sworn there. Oh, you could just walk in and talk to them and talk about your issues. They wouldn't tell
Yeah.
anyone else. It's like, almost a group of trained individuals who act kind of as the guidance counselor, who are in between the leader and in between the legal liability of things. Because I do understand what you're saying. If you tell your boss something's going on, and by the way, if something is going on that's beyond your control, I just want to voice this because I'm active in suicide prevention. Immediately do seek help if you are in that point. But if you're just going through, you're getting to a point where you're just overwhelmed, if you had to take some time off work, do it. Don't risk there's no reason to keep pushing your cognitive load to the point of burnout and depression and anxiety. So I would say, find a way to get help. Not to promote, but I do telehealth life coaching for this. So call me, and just find, or even just find a trusted friend, or I don't know any resources. If you want, after this, I could do some research, see if there's anything online that is something that is similar to what I'm talking about. In other words, balance the work, but also have that safety net. I think there's even apps that are like mental health apps, like ChatGPT. Even ChatGPT, you could talk to it and just tell you, you could tell it what you're feeling. It sounds weird, but it's true. Robots AI has gotten to that point. And just say what you're feeling. And sometimes even just writing down your thoughts and your feelings without any input from someone else, it helps us clear our minds and we get in a better place. So once again, in that sense, just have a source that's between the two poles, that's not breaking the regulations or liabilities of the company, but that also doesn't put you at risk for your job. And find a way to do that, whatever works for you, in that sense. And again, I'll repeat, if you're just because I had to do this, I lost a cousin to suicide 7 years ago, so it's a big issue. A lot of suicides are related to work conditions, that are things developed from working too hard or being overworked. If you do need help, to that point, don't ever hesitate to think help is weakness. Go get the help you need. And if you are stressed at work and just can't take it, don't sit there and just put yourself through that. It's not worth it. You might have a family and kids to feed, but at the same time, you have to worry about yourself more. Put yourself ahead of everyone, everyone and everything else, in my opinion.
Exactly. Exactly. And I also think, Ryan, that maybe it will take time, but
Oh, of course.
there is a way out. Like, before before figuring something out for yourself, because at the same time you also have to pay the bills, you have to take care of your family, you maybe for the caregiver. But then that particular time period where you are deciding, you're planning, you never know what kind of opportunities are actually knocking the doors for you.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that should be something that is going to help you get carried through that difficult time period. And of course, help is available out there, listeners. I'll have the details, the helplines and everything in the show notes. And this is something that, I very, very personally believe, just not for the sake of that, just mentioning details, that you are not alone, because there are people who are out there available to help you, your loved ones, maybe your friends, your ex-colleagues, your maybe mentors, sometimes teachers, school friends. It can be anyone. So I think the hope is that something will get us going on.
And don't neglect the idea of social media, by the way, when you're dealing with those issues, because I'll put it this way: don't go on Reddit. I've been on Reddit. That's a place you don't vet your feelings, because people will just go ahead and just harass you just for it. But there are, find support. I'm sure there are support groups on Facebook. There are people that I'm sure you have in your connection that would be willing to listen. And sometimes that's all you need, is just someone to listen to you, or just someone to talk to. That's what a therapist is really there for, not to give you the answers, but to give you a way to find the answer on your own. That's a very important aspect to mention, I think. So well put.
Yeah. Same for you. Very well said. And of course, if listeners, they would like to connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
Easiest way is my email. You can go to ryan@rwmcc.com and email me. That's not my writing website, so don't go to the brand. That's not my life coaching one. That's my writing, my book page. But the email's shorter, so it's easier to remember. You could also just Google my name. Just make sure it's Ryan W. McClellan, because there's 296 other Ryan McClellans out there, and the W, there's only one. So just Google me, find my LinkedIn, find my websites, find anything you can, and just reach out. I'm always available to talk. And I'm not one of those, and as we've seen in this, I'm not here to take advantage of someone's money or someone's opportunity. So if you do need to reach out to a coach, or just talk to someone, or just have a conversation with, I'm always available.
That's really inspiring, Ryan. And listeners, I'll have all the details in the show notes for all of you. So just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And Ryan, thank you so much, because
Thank you.
Crucial, ongoing conversation. You really brought heart and strategy with statistics and lived experiences to the table. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So, listeners, I think if you're listening right now, let's just take a challenge for this week, like a real leadership homework. Ask your team one question that matters. What's one small change that would make your week meaningfully better? Then don't overthink it. Just pilot the change for 2 weeks. And second, protect your own mental space. Block 1 hour of deep work, or maybe just start with 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Start small, but consistency, because that matters. And model it, because the way you care for your mental health and your mind, it teaches your team how to work and care for theirs as well. So until then, this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, and I'm your host, Sana. And until next time, remember that when we lead with heart, innovation follows. Thank you, and take care.